Good morning. Thank you for joining us for part 2 of our budgeting seminar. This particular segment is going to be concentrating specifically on Serenic Navigator. If anyone is on the call that is not using Navigator, please feel free to stay on, but some of the features that you're going to see might not be available in the standard version, but if you're thinking about going to a not-for-profit version, you can definitely find some things here, and you'll see some of the differences between Standard Nav and Serenic Navigator and some of the enhancements that they have that are specific to a not-for-profit, specifically where budgeting is concerned. So just want to introduce myself real quick. I'm Danica Pelgrim with Intelice Solutions. I'll have another slide deck with the same information at the end so that you can jot down our website and my contact information. It's generally easiest to contact me via email, but there's my direct line number. If you want to leave a message, I can get back to you as soon as possible. Here's a high-level overview of what the agenda will be today. We're going to be talking about just what I consider like a basic budget. Really what a basic budget is just using a GL import in order to get your budget posted into Nav or Serenic Navigator. And then I'm just going to talk about some high-level features and just the base functionality of advanced budgeting. And by advanced budgeting, I mean the Budget Vision module that was introduced 3-4 versions ago. And then I'm just going to show real quick how to do some budget versus actual reporting, and we'll show you how to use that. So let's start with creating a basic budget. So first we need to define a budget plan. In both using advanced and basic, you do need to start with that point. Now, if you do a search on budget plan in Serenic Navigator, you'll have a couple different options where you would find it. And when we go back into Nav and show you where to go, there's this very specific list that you need to make sure that you access when you want to do the ones with GL. When you get that list, you want to make sure in your top right-hand corner it says filter by GL. And the reason why you need this is when we go to import our budget on your batch, there is a field there where you can indicate the budget plan that you want to be using in that particular import. And you want to make sure that you have the budget plan listed there that you're going to be importing, and that your import has the proper budget plan number on it also, because otherwise, if those two pieces of information don't match, the budget plan that you have on the batch and the budget plan that's on your import, it will not do the check to make sure that the dates within your import conform to the dates in the budget plan list that you have specified here. I've actually set up another one that we're going to be using in the sample, and I'll show you that in a little while. This slide deck I know is a little overwhelming, but I just wanted to give kind of like one-stop shopping of all the fields that are included in the journal template that you would use to import into Serenic Navigator. I also provided a link. If anyone wants a copy of the slide deck, I'd be more than happy to send it to them. This is Serenic's help topic, where you would find the standard journal import. And just for your information, this particular journal template could be used on any of the different batches, whether it's a general journal import, a budget, a statistical journal, an encumbrance, or anything else. And these are just all the fields. Some of them are required, and you can see the one where I've indicated they're required, and others are optional, but you need to have a placeholder for each one of those. And there's nice instructions in there that tell you you have to delete the 2 header rows. So like I said, in Serenic Navigator, when you go to enter a journal, you have a bunch of different types of journals here. And one thing, this is one feature that is different in Navigator as opposed to standard Nav. When you post budgets in Navigator, they actually post to your general ledger entry table as opposed to simply a budget entry table. And the way Navigator makes a distinction between the different transactions is there's a transaction type on all of the transactions that get posted in Serenic Navigator. So by virtue of selecting your budget journal, it automatically will post everything to a transaction type of budget. Just like in Nav, it'll automatically bring you into the last batch that you were in. Then you want to navigate to your batch list, and here is where you would indicate the balance account that you want on here. And with budgets, the most common one that's used as the balancing account is your net asset account, because even though this is a budget entry, since it is posting to the general ledger, you do need, in fact, you need to have a balanced entry. Now, here is where I you can see here you need to put your budget plan number, and this needs to match the budget plan that you're going to be importing. Once you're in your batch, you go to your Actions tab and you select your Excel import. Then you have the opportunity to navigate to the file that you want to import, and then down here you can just see a high-level overview of what the imported entry looks like. Once that's in, you can of course make manual entries in here to further correct it before posting. And another thing I just want to point out, when you're doing any imports, both either here or even when you're doing your advanced budgeting, you want to use the natural sign of the transaction. So if you have revenue accounts, you want to make sure that they're credits. And if they're expense accounts, you want to bring those in as debits if you want them to report and appear on reports in their natural signage. Okay, so on that note, let's go in, bring Nav over here, and just recap some of the things I just talked about. So first I'm going to do a search on budget plans. And then you can see here, if I go to the ones that say department, that's going to bring me to my budget vision department. There's one here that says general, and I want to go to budget plans. And then you can see my little filter here says GL. I added one called mid-year forecast, and that's the one that we're going to be working with today. So once I have that set up, you can see my dates here that are eligible to import are between January and December 31st of 2017. If your import has any dates outside that range, you will receive error messages. But that is only if the batch has that same budget, and that's the budget plan number that's in your import. So now I'm going to go into the journal. I'm going to select my budget journal. And this is the one that I'm going to use today. So I just want to pull up my list here and make sure my FY 2017 mid-year forecast budget is the one that I want to import, and that's right. So I'm in my general journal batch. Maybe I'll just back up a little bit. And then now if I look at my batch, this is my budget plan that I want to import. And I'm going to go to my Actions tab and go to Excel Import. And this is going to ask me to navigate to a file. And this is the one, my mid-year forecast one, that I want to bring in. Just open it. This one kind of has a couple hundred entries in it. Now you can see it brings in the whole entire entry. And so right here, you can see it automatically puts my balance account in there. And this budget plan matches what I have on my batch here. So I'm just going to go ahead and post this. It shouldn't take too long. And the reason why I want to post this is because I want to show a few different, in the reporting element, when we get to look at it, some comparative ones, so that you can see that for 1 year you can have multiple different budgets and how we might be able to view those. So that's really kind of it. It's really pretty simple how to do that. And if you want to make any corrections, you can just go back into that batch and just do a regular standard journal entry in order to make any corrections or modifications. So advanced budgeting, that is a whole new module that Serenic Navigator introduced. I don't know, it has to be maybe 5-6 years ago. I think it originally came out with version 2009, so it has been around a little bit. And over time they've refined it a little bit. But at a highest level, you just define a plan. And what kind of sets budget vision aside from the standard journal entry is there's a little bit more advanced features that I'm not going to get into, but what you can do here is you can see that you can add what they call subplans, and then under your subplans you can add different versions. What are the advantages to using the subplans is you'll see when we get in just a minute and in the slide deck in a little while, when we define subplans, you can actually assign people that are specific users who would be preparers, and they would be the only ones that would have access to go in and manage that budget. Also, you can specify specific funds and or other dimensions that the users would use on that budget. And then also you can define what are called account sets in here. And what those account sets would do is you would create them with only the GL accounts that you want the users to see when they're creating the budget. So someone who's a award administrator or something like that, it gives them a much more concise list of accounts to see when they're doing it, and it'll make it a lot easier on them as they're developing it. And so at the subplan level is where you would define all that information. And if I scroll down here, we'll start getting into a little bit more of the other settings here. The actual budget vision setup it's very kind of bare bones, not a whole lot, just some rounding pieces that we would need to set up, and then different levels of number series, the BV plan, your sub plan, and then your different versions. I have it set up so that everything auto increments, and then you have default spread method and balance accounts. In just a second, we'll talk about what these spread methods are. What the spread methods can do and what your options are, you can see right here, the different options on the screen here. I'm displaying one where you can spread amounts 25% per quarter. So you would indicate the number of periods that you want to have that amount spread over, and then you can see over here, it's only displaying up to period 9, but it actually on this list goes through period 12. And then you would have to define your percentages and make sure however you spread those out, it ultimately equals 100%. Because we'll see in just a minute, and I'm going to use the even spread method, but what this would do is you can put in like an actual, just like an annual total, select a spread method, and then it'd spread it out based on the percentages that you have here. So that kind of streamlines a lot of the data entry, as opposed to doing it like in an Excel spreadsheet. You would have to make like a separate line for each period and put your, basically manually spread it out yourself. Now the GL account sets, you have to have at least one GL account set on each one of your sub plans. And here's a sample of one of them where you can see it's just bare bones. These are the only GL accounts that the user would be able to see when they're inputting the budgets. If you wanted to have a GL account set that had all of your GL accounts, then you might set one up that's called all, and then just select every single GL account number and then chart of accounts. You can have as many different GL account sets as you want, but only one account set can be set up on each sub-plan. So setting up a budget plan is pretty easy. You would just go to your budget plan list, select new, and basically it's just this header information that gets set up here. Whoever's creating it gets set up as a global administrator, and you can assign a secondary global administrator. The global administrators has full access and rights to the whole entire plan, and they're the ones that would likely, like administer it, follow up on it, make changes to it, approve it, post it, so on and so forth. And we'll see in just a minute where you can assign the, what's called preparers, approvals, and admins, other than what you see here. The next step would be to define your subplan. So once you have your high-level plan set up, on the ribbon you would go to define a subplan, and then this window would open up. Your subplan is where you're going to define the valid funds, cost centers, and your GL account sets that would be used for this particular subplan. And I just called this one administration. And again, I'll display how to set this up and how it's used in just a minute once we finish going through all these slides. So this is options that would be available if a user tried to access or use anything outside the criteria that you've set here. They would get an error message. You can also assign deadlines when they need to have it done if needed. Once you're on the subplan and you have that core information set up, right on this ribbon here, you can go to user access, and this is where you would define who the preparer is going to be. You have to have a minimum of one preparer, and even if you're a global administrator and you want to have access to preparing it, you actually have to put the global administrator's name here as well. But you can have up to 10 preparers listed there. Once you have all of your preparers and approvers listed there, then you would generate it. Once you generate it, you would then see your subplan list available on that main screen. Once you've defined that subplan and it's available, now's where you can start setting up your versions. Your versions are actually where all of your data entry is done. There's not a limit on how many versions you can have, but there's only one version that can actually get approved and put to a status called admin review, and once it's in admin review, that's when it would be eligible for posting. Now here, when you're creating up your version, again, there's just make it descriptive of, this description should be something that's going to be functional for you. I'm just doing something very simple, version 1, 2, 3, and 4, whatever. Now this source type kind of drives how you want this initially set up. Today I'm just going to show how to start with zeros and import from Excel. Some of these other ones are kind of intuitive. Copy from version means a budget plan version, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a version that's on this specific budget plan that you're working with. Then we have copy from history, actual budget, and budget versus actual. If anyone has any further questions on this, you can give us a call or call your Serenic VAR, and I'm sure they'd be happy to give you a little bit more information on how to use these other types of sources to try to manage and create your budgets, because this is kind of where the power comes in, makes your data entry a little bit more streamlined and gives you a lot of good starting points in managing your budgets. Again, if you want to use an import from Excel, there is a template for this as well, and it is different than the template that you would use for the general journal. So I have a link to where you can get that, and you can see this is pared down quite a bit from the standard general journal template. Again, I just wanted to list all the fields here, just kind of for one-stop shopping, see the information that you would need. Once you have some subplans and versions in here and they're approved, they change to a status in admin review. And it might be a little bit hard to see here, but you can see on this very first subplan, I have 2 different versions, but only one version can actually be an admin review. And once you have one version that is an admin review, it changes the status of the subplan to in admin review. Once each one of your subplans has this status of in admin review, then this post to GL button becomes available. This is grayed out and is not available until all of your subplans have, state that they're in admin review. So now let's take a look at setting up a budget plan. I already have one started because actually setting up a budget plan is really pretty easy. So I'm just going to actually go into this one that I had started. If you wanted to do a new one, you would just hit new. It would increment to 50. That would be probably the next one in line. Give it a name. Once you have subplans, your dates are grayed out, and those aren't, you don't have the capability to change those. Define your balance account number, because again, just want to remind you, even though we're not doing this in a journal, this does in fact post to your general ledger. So you need a balancing entry. The way I did my budget, I did not do a balanced one, so it's going to plug everything to this 3010. If your budget comes in, balanced, and that's the way you want to enter it, then this won't be necessary. So you can see here, I already have a subplan and a version that's in process. I'm going to define a new subplan, and I'm just going to call this one Finance. And here is where you would pick whatever funds you want to be valid, and these would be the only ones that would be available and valid on this particular subplan. Here, just to make sure, I'm just going to grab all of these, and if I grab all of these at one time, when I bring them in, it automatically puts the ellipse in here for me, kind of slick. Here's also where you want to pick your GL account set. I'm going to pick operating expenses because I happen to know that that is the group of accounts that I have in this particular budget that I'm going to import. So while I'm still here, I want to go into my user access. And this is where I'm going to find the list. It initially comes up with no preparers. So I'm going to put myself on as a preparer. And if I wanted to put other people on as preparers, I can put those on as well. And you need an approver. I'm going to approve it. And you need to assign a role for the approver. And then admin, I think that automatically comes in with the global admin that's assigned here, and it does. So I'm going to hit OK here. So I have all of my users set up, and then I'm going to generate my subplan. And it creates it successfully. So now when I go back to my budget, now I have my subplan. So once you have your subplan created, I'm going to go back into my subplan. And now if you come into a subplan and you don't see this create version here, it's likely you have not been listed as a preparer. So you need to be careful that when you assign user access here, that you have whoever needs to create the version set up as preparer. So now I can create a version. And again, I'm just going to go version 1. And I'm actually going to go to import from Excel. And when you change that, you get different options down here. And I want to bring it in by period. And I'm going to use the imported amounts. And then I'm going to hit OK. And it's going to ask me, and this is the only point at which you have this option. If you miss the opportunity to do your import here, you can't go back. So you need to make sure that you have your Budget Vision import ready to go. And I am going to import my Budget Vision, and 8 records are there. That's great. So let's hit OK there. And now I can go into my budget, my version here. I double click on that. Now I can see some amounts that were generated. And that was by virtue of importing everything. And you can go down and drill down and see all the data here. The cost center is associated with everything. So once you're in here, I'll just show a couple of other features. So if I go to office supplies, I can do a direct entry by total. This is where you might want to take advantage of, I'm going to just go to, I don't think I have anything on this line here, so I'm going to go $1,200, and I'm actually just going to filter it by this particular line as well. And you can see my spread method came in for $1,200. I'm just putting a total amount in here, and I'm going to generate detail. Oh, it's incomplete because you need to have all the information in here. So I need to put my cost center. Very important. And you can see my list here was only the cost centers that I had selected. It's not an all-inclusive list of the dimensions that are actually available. So, and I think on my fund number, it would be the same thing. I'm not getting a whole entire list of my funds. It's just the ones that I had selected on my subplan. So now I should be able to generate my detail. Okay. And I can hit OK here, and now you can see it spread it all out here. So that really streamlines your data entry very, very efficiently. So direct entry by period, it's somewhat of a similar concept, except here you're going to see all of your periods listed out here. So this is where if you had a different amount, so maybe I have $100 here, and again, you can see it's very picky about making sure it's essential that you have cost centers in here when you're inputting this stuff. So I'll do 100, 200, 300, 400, and then hit OK. And then you can see all those amounts get here. So by period, you would, and you don't necessarily need to put in something for every period. If there's a period you don't expect some expense to be there, just skip it. One thing I want to point out is these 2 lines right here. These were the ones that were used on our import. If I need to change these or manage these, one thing that you might want to do is just kind of go in, and you can see that this cost center says cost center 910 here. If you want to correct the ones that were brought in by your Excel import, if I go into direct entry by period, you want to make sure that you have the cost center here at the top here, or else this is going to be blank. This is voice of experience speaking here. I kept wondering how come all of my data isn't showing up. It's because you actually need to have your cost center here in order to manage this. So let's say I wanted to change this to 1,000 and do 222 here, and then put 1,000 here. I can even change, that's how we would change the stuff that I even started, with an import. So once you have your budget all input here and you're kind of ready to submit it for approval, you would do a submit, and it's been submitted for approval. And now if there was something that you needed to change on it, if your supervisor came back to you and said that you need to revise some things, then you can send this back to a return status and acknowledge that, and then it would be available to come in and make further modifications to it again. But I'm just going to go ahead and go through with this and submit this. I'm going to approve it because I can. And then I'm going to go into this budget also, and I'm going to, this version, submit it and approve it. And I'm actually just going to go out of this because even if I hit refresh, this doesn't seem to change the statuses of it. So I'm just going to escape out of my budget and come back in. And you can see everything is in admin review at this time. And now my post to GL budget is available. So I'm just going to go ahead and post this to general ledger, hit yes. And I absolutely want to post this. Budget lines posted. And then you can see everything goes away and there's no changes that can be made to this from this point forward. So that, in a nutshell, is how you use Budget Vision. There's a lot more features to it that I'm not going to get into in this training class. You can create calculations and assumptions and justifications. If anyone feels that those are features that you might want to use, feel free to give us a call to get more in-depth information on that, or call your Serenic VAR, whoever that may be. I'm sure they'd be happy to get into a little bit more detail with that. So now I'm just going to talk about how we would use that in budget versus actual reporting. I did create a column layout and I have a sample snapshot of what that might look like. Again, one distinction, because all of the budget entries post directly to the general ledger, we have a transaction type as opposed to entry type here. So on any of your columns where you want to report budgets, you want to make sure that you have that selected. And the way I designed this particular one is if you want to have a specific budget shown in one column, I can put a budget plan filter here. So I have 48 and 49, and this particular row, the third one here that says budget, since I don't have a filter on it, it's going to pull in all of the budgets based on the posting dates that I have on the account schedule. So let me bring this back over and we'll take a look at an account schedule, and I'm going to go to that same exact layout again. So I need to go to column layout. And I'm going to go to my webinar one, and you can see the two budgets that I just posted. This is my mid-year forecast journal entry, and this is my budget 49. This is the other one that I just posted using Budget Vision. So you can see here on all four of these, I have a specific budget plan, and they might be a little bit different, and this one is a total budget. So if I were to go to Overview and look at this, you can see I have budgets in all four of these columns, and the total budget amount here includes all of them. So there's not a limit on how many budgets that you can put in here, but now it's typical you're only going to have one budget budget column that you're going to look at, but if you wanted to see all of them, you could. But in general, you're only going to want to filter on one. So now if I put a filter here, you can see this is the only one that has that particular budget filter on it, and then this also matches now. Now I do want to point out here, these are just the budgets that were created using Budget Vision, but even though you don't see one on the list, if you know the name of the budget that you entered via a journal entry, if you put that in here, it will accept the filter without getting an error, and you can see the budget here changed to that particular plan that we had put in there, even though it was imported. So that's just a little bit of a nuance there that you might want to keep in mind. You're doing that because here as well, you're going to see kind of like the same thing. You're only going to see your list from your Budget Vision budgets, but if you know the budget plan, the GL ones, it will accept that value. You won't get an error as far as invalid. So that's it in a nutshell, the difference between basic and advanced budgeting. Let us know if there's any other topics that you're interested in seeing. You can either email me directly or put them in the chat box. And our next month's webinar, part 3 of our budget series, is going to be with using a tool which is an Excel add-in called Full Circle Budget. And T3 Solutions is who will hopefully be assisting us with the webinar on that. And that is an integration with Nav. So it'll be kind of fun to see what they have to offer. Again, here's my contact information. Okay, thank you very much, and I appreciate everyone joining us today.